Hello fellow guitar geeks. Today I'm taking a look at the Amped 1 from Blackstar. The Amped 1 is a 3-channel 100-watt pedalboard sized amplifier with built-in reverb. And Blackstar promised that it's the solution for guitar players that want to play loud but keep their rig small. Let's see what you get inside the box. The first thing that grabbed my attention was this QR code printed there. When you scan this with your phone, you get to a website from Blackstar telling you how to get started with the Amped 1. You've got a bunch of videos, some quick start guides, and really all the information you need to get up and running with the amplifier. Then moving the amp to one side for a second, we've got the cables. First up is the power cable, a standard IEC kettle lead, then a USB cable for connecting to your computer, a Y cable for connecting to the effects loop of the amp, a MIDI in cable, a Blackstar VIP card so you can register the amp in your name, a sticker, and a printed quick start guide. Finally, in this thankfully minimal packaging, we've got the amp itself with the controls on top, connections on the back, more connections on the right hand side, and rubber feet underneath. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I would use the Blackstar Amped 1. Because in my band, I've played through the Marshall Bluesbreaker, which is glorious, but super heavy and inconvenient. I've also played through the Marshall SV20 Combo, which was far more convenient, but I didn't really like the sound. And I'm really hoping that the Amped 1 is going to deliver everything I need to get my guitar louder than the drummer. Or allow me to rock up to gigs and practice with just a pedal board and a guitar without compromising on my tone. This is a bit of a dream of mine. But before I get into that, let's take a look at what all the knobs and switches do. If you're using one of these for the first time, I recommend you do this first. Master volume down, select your power rating. You can have 1 watt, 20 watts, or 100 watts. Having it at 100 watts or 20 watts does not necessarily mean you want to be loud, but it gives you more headroom. So you could have 1 watt and crank it, and you'll actually be distorting the power amp section. Whereas if you had it at 20 watts or 100 watts, and with less volume on the master, you'd have more headroom for your pedals. I'm going to stick it in 1 watt now and just put the master down for a second. Then the next thing I do is choose your voice. The USA voice is based on a Fender Deluxe Reverb 65, in my opinion, and it sounds like this. The second voice on the amp is the UK, which is somewhere between a Vox AC30 and a Marshall Plexi, and that sounds like this. And then if you want to use some external preamps or a modeler such as an HX Stomp or a 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, then I would use the third voice, which is flat, and set the response to linear, giving you a power amp with a 3-band EQ. So this doesn't color the sound unless you're playing with the bass, middle, and treble. Also, we've got a reverb section here which you can turn on or off with this foot switch, and you can dial in how much reverb you have just here. And if you hold this down, you get a freeze on the reverb. Then over here to this section, the response part. So these are different valve models, starting with the KT88 and working our way to the 6L6, the EL34, the 6V6, and to the EL84. This one being more compressed and getting less compressed as you go back to the KT88. And even though certain amps and certain valves go together like cheese and wine, that doesn't mean you have to stick to that pairing with the Amped 1. You can have a Marshall-style valve power section with a Fender-style preamp section. So it's really fun to play around with this. Let's have a listen to the different responses. Let's do some humbuckers for this section. So, USA voiced KT88 first, and I'll work my way through the different responses. Let's switch over to the UK and do the same thing. So this is going to be a bit more gainy. I think my favourite for that was maybe the 𝗚𝗨𝗏𝗡𝗏. There's a big difference between that and this. And finally, we've got a preset. So currently the panel says that I'm on a flat response preamp going through some KT88s with reverb on. And then if I press the preset, it switches over to a UK, Vox or Marshall with an 𝗚𝗨𝗏𝗡 in the power amp section, reverb off. Let's say I wanted to save it with reverb on, hold down the preset for a few seconds, and now that preset has reverb on. So when I go back to it, the reverb stays on. Okay, that's the top of the amp covered. Let's take a look at the connections round on the back. So let's start on the left. We've got the MIDI in mini socket. So you need that breakout cable that was in the box. That gives you a full-sized MIDI in DIN socket. Then you've got the fan to keep the amp nice and cool. The input jack socket, so you can plug your guitar straight in there, or the pedals that you want to go in front of the preamp. Then you've got a single socket for the loop, the effects loop. This is where you need your second breakout cable, which is stereo to 2 monos, so you can go in and out through your reverbs or delays or whatever you want to go in your effects loop. Just a note, don't plug that Y cable in if you don't want to put anything in the effects loop. Otherwise, you might not get any sound out of the amp and might spend 5 or 10 minutes troubleshooting your connections. Up here is the USB-C modern connection. Nice to see a USB-C connection on a Blackstar device. USB-C is not just the future, it is the now. So please, companies, stick with USB-C from now on. Then we have an 8 ohm speaker out and a 16 ohm speaker out. And one of the cool things about the Amped One is that when it says 100 watts or 20 watts or 1 watts, it means that regardless of whether you're operating at 8 ohms or 16 ohms. So some amps, when you plug into 16 ohms, will only give you a 50 watt amp at maximum volume. The Amped One stays at 100 or 20 or 1, regardless of what speaker cab you're using. Then we've got our power in and our power switch. And then finally, one of the best features of this amp is the fact that it's got a power supply for pedals built into it. Nice thinking, Blackstar. 9 volts out, 500 milliamps total between these two. So you don't need a separate power supply for your pedals. You just get the power straight from the amp itself. And I am wondering whether these are isolated. So in a bit, I'm going to plug in a digital pedal and an analog pedal and see if they make any noise. I hope they don't. Round on this side are connections for your DI box or audio interface or mixing desk or indeed headphones. So you can use the Amped One for silent practice. You do not need to have a load on it with the speaker cab. So you can put your headphones in here, or you can put a stereo out into a mixing desk and have stereo sound. Or take a mono balanced signal from the XLR. You can adjust the level of these two just here with this little level knob. And then here we've got a 3-way switch for selecting your cab rig settings. In fact, let's talk about cab rig and the Architect software. Here it is. It's quite pretty and it's nice and simple and easy to use. It's a very user-friendly interface. Anyway, what's fun about it is because it's MIDI controlled, you can change stuff on the software and it will change on the pedal. So if I adjust the response on the software, the light changes on the pedal, and then vice versa, if I change the gain on the pedal, it changes on the software as well. I'm not sure if that's useful, but it certainly is pretty and makes me smile. So that's a good thing. Right, let's talk about the cab rig part. You get to cab rig by clicking down here, and you're presented with a rather simple but familiar and rather nice to use interface. So at the top, we've got the master EQ of the cab rig. So this is not the EQ of the amp. The bass, middle, and treble on the amp is something different. You've got some presets you can select here. So flattened for no effect, cab in the room for a bit more bass, and then we've got lo-fi to cut all the bass. And then you've got different settings recommended for a different mic. Let's go, in fact, let's turn it off lo-fi before it sounds awful. Let's put it on Cab in the Room. Cabinets down here. There are many cabinets. In fact, that's 6 times 4, 24 different settings just here. That's more than we need, I would guess, or more than most people would need. I think there's got to be 1 or 2 good ones in there at the very least. Let's look at the mics as well. There are 6 mics available, 2 dynamics, 2 condensers, and 2 ribbon mics. You can also put them on axis or off axis. And then on the room in the middle, this is the room reverb. So when you've got that cab in that room, you can select what type of room and how big it is, and therefore how wide or stereo or mono you want that reverb to be if you're running out of the stereo outs. So let's move on to the patches. In the device itself, we've got 3 patches, which is the switch on the right-hand side. You've got the UK combo, Type 4x12, and the USA combo. And the way that I would run this is I would have 2 IRs, or 2 cab rig IRs that I like in there, 1 and 2. And then on number 3, I would go to Cabinet and choose DI. And that gives me no cab IR on that 3rd position. So now I've got UK combo, Type 4x12, and a clean DI. And I promise you, giving a sound engineer options is going to make you very popular when you're gigging. There's something else in Architect I want to talk about, and that's the cogwheel here, which is the settings, and then go to audio settings, and then reverb type. So this is where you can select the different types of reverb, room, spring, or plate. And this is the thing that I wish was available on the amp itself. I don't like the fact that you have to go into the software to change the type of reverb. Maybe there's only room on the amp itself for one type of reverb. Maybe it's a DSP thing, and when you do this, it sends different signals to the amp to say, right now, only save the one type of reverb. But for me, I think I should be able to switch from a Fender style with a spring to a Marshall style with a plate with just clicking the reverb foot switch. And the fact that you can't do that is a little upsetting, but it means you need to use an external reverb in the effects loop to really get out those reverb features. So I wish Blackstar had included the 3 different types of reverb as switchable on the amp itself. And if Blackstar want to reach out to me and tell me if that's possible and coming in a firmware update, I would welcome it. Blackstar are definitely marketing the Amped One to be used with pedals. So even though the onboard sounds are perfectly fine and good pedal platform sounds, I don't really like the gain once it gets past about sort of 12 o'clock, 75% on either of the 2 amp channels. So let's put some pedals through them and get some gain from pedals instead of from the unit itself. Up first, the tried and tested Moxie from 𝗬𝗪𝗡𝗪 giving us a Tubescreamer sort of sound. Let's go for Fender style first. Here's the clean. Now there's some noise coming from it because I'm on single coils. I can get rid of that by putting it in position 4. But to me, that sounds great. That is, I don't want to say the same as the time that I put the Tubescreamer Moxie through my Fender Deluxe Reverb. But so far, I think I'm closer to getting that ampless rig that I was dreaming of. All right, let's try the same through the USA Plexi. This should be warmer. This should be even closer to what I'm trying to achieve live. Here's clean, a little bit hairier this time. And again, it's getting that warmth that was not there with the Fender, and it's a choice. I think I would want to change the settings of the Moxie a little bit, but that's definitely something that would work for me live. I'm excited, and I'm going to put a Boss DS1 through it now. I know the DS1 like the back of my hand, so I'm very much looking forward to hearing this. USA first, so Fender, and I've got the Fender Kurt Cobain Jaguar. Clean sounds like this. There's already hair there, So I'm thinking, yeah, it should be okay. But DS1. It's a little bit bright, a little bit raspy. All right, let's try the UK. Okay, I definitely prefer the US style for that DS1, which is not surprising because that's what I usually play a DS1 through. Or DS1W, I should say, the 𝗬𝗪𝗡𝗏 version. This guitar is extremely high output, and even without the DS1W on, it's already really raspy and nasty. And I probably need to change the amp a little bit more just to get it to where I like it, but it works with the DS1W. The amp's a little brighter on the USA than I'm used to with the actual Fender model, so this is more of a hi-fi sound, I guess. And I was really enjoying changing the different responses in that, and it really, really did change the tone. So far, it's a pass for the DS1. I would love to hear that loud, and I might try that in a band situation if the boys will allow me to play some grunge. Let's do Fuzz. Keeping it white with the Maybach Albatroz SG type guitar and the Big Muff J Mascis Ram's Head signature from EHX. Let's hear what this sounds like. Clean first, and we'll do USA first again. What is it? It's a bit something, a bit too bitey. I'm going to switch it to UK, and hopefully that's going to get a bit warmer. That's a bit too bitey for my liking. Ugh. I'm not sure I like it with fuzz. I've started to lose a little bit of faith in it, if I'm honest. That sounded more solid state, more plasticky. Okay, I'm going to keep going until I find something I like with this fuzz. That did it. Okay, neck pickup. Not convinced with the 𝗬𝗎𝗪𝗧𝗔𝗕𝗟𝗓 fuzz, and I know fuzz can be really, really temperamental. So, I don't know. I don't know. I do know. I do know. I don't like it that much. If I did like it that much, I would not be saying I don't know. Okay, let me try a different fuzz through it quickly, because I feel that that was too much DS1W distortion ram's head fuzz territory. I'm going to try the Constellation from Crazy Tube Circuits. Now that I've pushed the bass up, as I would on an actual Plexi amp, like this, that actually sounds more like I feel that pedal should sound. And that's good news, because I was losing faith in the Amped One's ability to handle fuzz. So thankfully, it brought it back, unsurprisingly, by changing the settings. That EQ is fairly powerful, so again, we could change the settings by changing the response. Yeah, it's on screen at the moment, so... Yeah, alright, it does fuzz. I'm happy that it does fuzz. I'd need some more playing around. Definitely want to play this with my band to see how it sits in a mix. That's going to come in a future video. I can almost guarantee it. Now, in the spirit of going all pedal board, no amp, and minimizing your setup as much as possible, I think the power of this sort of setup could lie within using an amp modeler. So setting the Amped One as flat, and using my trusty HX Stomp, he says, trying to reach over to get it, my trusty HX Stomp to be the amp voicings of it. So let's set this to flat, linear, and plug this in. In fact, I wonder if this will be able to be powered by the Amped One. It does say in the manual not to exceed the 500 milliamps, but the HX Stomp requires, I think it's 1.3 amps. I know it's more than 500 milliamps, half an amp. Let's plug it in and see if it turns on. Okay, for the HX Stomp, you need a different cable, so it won't plug in with a standard 9-volt cable. I've got this little mystery cable that I made up. That's the wrong side. Come on, plug in. There we go. Right, that's there. And plug the red end into the HX Stomp and see if we get power. On. Oh! We get power to the HX Stomp. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, I don't know what that's doing to the power supply in the Amped One, so I could end up with smoke. But what have I got here? I need to power that. There, that's got to go into the output. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that worked. Nothing's working. Okay, maybe it doesn't work after all. Let's try the original HX Stomp power supply. Okay, I'm getting sound now. Maybe the Amped One was supplying enough power to get lights and stuff, but not actually power the HX Stomp. I'll try it again. No, it's not powering the HX Stomp. All I've changed is the power supply, and it won't work. That's a real shame. I'm not really surprised or disappointed, because Blackstar did say on the back of the amp not to exceed 500 milliamps, and I know the HX Stomp requires more than that. But let's hear what this sounds like if I go through this. Let's go for a direct sound, a 𝗚𝗏𝗏 rectifier, flat response. Let's put the EQ back to the middle and the reverb off. Linear here. Let's hear what this sounds like. I was in 20-watt mode earlier. Right. I really don't like that patch, so let's try something a little more, a little less of whatever that was. that is a 𝗤𝗓𝗡𝗏 patch that I bought, and I think it's got an IR on it, and I'm putting it through a cab at the same time. But already I can see the power of this board as if I was to invest some time in setting up the correct patch and with the Amped 1. That's got a lot of potential. So I'm thinking a couple of analog overdrive pedals and a fuzz, the HX Stomp and the Amped 1 could be a killer rig. But what about putting something in the effects loop? So now the signal chain is guitar into the Moxie, Moxie into the input, the front end of the Amped 1, and then in the effects loop of the Amped 1, I've got the Plethora X3 running a patch called Geeky Picking, which was made by yours truly. So let's hear this. I prefer that. So rather than using the HX Stomp that I was using earlier, that to me is a better sound with an analog overdrive in the front and some delay and reverb in the effects loop. In fact, here's a patch on the Plethora called Organ Grinder that has an octave down and a phaser. Now that is a good sound. That's something I can get behind, and I think using the Plethora in the effects loop, using the Amped 1 as my main amp, and using some analog pedals before the Amped 1, that's going to get me a sound that I'm happy with without too much menu diving. Okay, what's left to talk about the Amped 1? The cab rig sounds. Okay, let's hear some of those sounds that I've made already using the cab rig output of the Amped 1. Almost everything that was recorded so far was also recorded using the cab rig, so let's hear that with some of the sounds that I made earlier. Right, wonderful. I had a listen to that in the edits, and I think it sounds good. Very, very usable, and certainly something you can send to front of house if you can't mic up a cab, or if you just want something that's very, very simple and quick and set up, off you go. The Amped 1 has even more left to offer. You can use it as an audio interface. It's got 4 in and 2 out, meaning that you can record simultaneously. Wow. The fan's just really kicked in. I think it's because it's powering those external pedals. That's good to know. So as I was explaining that, the fan kicked in. It must be because of the power supply. Let's take those out and see what happens if I do that. Now about 3 minutes has passed since that fan kicked into high gear, and it's still going. But the amp is not hot to the touch, and there's not that much air being blown out the back. So maybe it does need a better or more efficient fan. But if I was recording with that, that would be annoying. You know, recording silently or playing silently, that would be fairly annoying. That's quite loud. It's only happened since I was powering the external pedals, and I have had the amp on now for probably 6 or 7, maybe even 8 hours this day, just soak testing it and things like that. I'm going to power it off for this section of the video and see if it can cool down whilst I talk to you. So yes, it has a USB audio interface in it with 4 in and 2 outs, meaning that you can record 4 tracks simultaneously on your computer. You can have the 𝗚𝗪𝗔𝗕𝗟𝗓 left, the 𝗚𝗚𝗔𝗔𝗕𝗟𝗓 right, so then you have a stereo sound if you pan one left and one right. Input number 3 is after the preamp, but before all the power amp stuff and before all the 𝗚𝗚𝗔𝗕𝗟𝗓 stuff. So if you record that, it means you have a mono signal that can then be put through maybe torpedo wall of sound from 2 Notes or any other IR loader and power amp simulator that you like. And then the 4th output is the DI, so clean as if you were putting your guitar directly into your computer. And the 2 outputs, you can actually monitor stuff back, so using the headphone sockets or powered monitors, I guess, or the DI signal. You can play backing tracks from your computer and jam along to it through a PA system. So another use of this is using a computer as a playback device, go into the Amped 1 and then come out of the stereo TRS into a mixing desk, and then you can play backing tracks and guitar along with it, and off you jolly well pop. So let's power it back on and see if that fan has calmed down somewhat. Yes, it has. That's in the lower gear that it's been in all day. So I've had this amp on, as I said, for many hours, and I'm not surprised that the fan had kicked in to cool the power supply. Also, if you didn't notice, while I was using the 𝗚𝗏𝗧𝗏 X3 and the Moxie, there was no noise generated by using a digital pedal and an analog pedal, which means that the power supplied by the Amped 1 to those 9-volt pedals is isolated, or at least filtered/isolated enough to not cause a problem. Again, Blackstar have done something else fantastically. That would be a real shame if there was noise generated by this power supply, rendering the whole setup useless. The only thing I haven't covered so far is MIDI, and I might do that in a future video because I think that's quite a complicated subject that I don't think many of us will use. I might do it in the future, but I don't think many of you, sorry to judge you, I don't think many of you are interested in the MIDI capabilities. Although you probably should be, because on screen is the list of things that you can change with one switch. So I could even use the HX Stomp as the MIDI controller and also change the patches on the 𝗚𝗏𝗧𝗏 at the same time. So I could have one switch on the HX Stomp, changes the effects going into the Amped 1, and then change the channel of the Amped 1, change the amount of reverb, etc., change the tube, and then with one switch, change from a viscous vibe to a tremolo with a delay. I could do all that by pressing one button by using this scary little MIDI thing that I will probably cover in another video, I think. Right, time for my 2 cents. Now, I have kind of reviewed this thing all the way through the video, but now I really want to sum up my feelings. And my feelings are this. It's about 450 euros, about 400 pounds, and whatever that is in dollars. And that's a lot of amp, a lot of functionality, a lot of solution for that money. And if you're looking for something that you can just put in your gig bag and take to your show, this would get you through pretty much any show as long as you don't want high gain. For high gain, you're going to have to use pedals. The reverb in the Amped 1 is usable to great. The sounds are usable to great to fantastic, apart from when you want to get the gain past about 75% on that gain knob. I think the best use of the Amped 1 is really using it as a pedal platform or slight drive. Slight drive is okay. Then an overdrive pedal, so maybe a Marshall in a box or a Vox in a box or something like that would be great in the front end. Then an external something in the effects loop for delay, and the 𝗚𝗏𝗧𝗏 from TC is absolutely perfect for this. So I'm really happy that I've discovered that setup, and I think this is the setup I'm going to use at my next band rehearsal. And that means yet another video coming on the Amped 1 of me using it in a band rehearsal. And I have faith. I lost a little bit of faith with the fuzz pedals, but the distortion and the overdrive, really, really cool. It sets those very, very well. I would need to spend more time with fuzz. So maybe a fuzz dedicated video with the Amped One. Overall, I really enjoy the Amped One. I think it's going to solve a lot of problems for a lot of people, and for the money, you're getting a lot of features. It's not perfect. For example, I wish you could switch the reverb by using a foot switch rather than having to plug it into your computer and going from spring to room to plate. I think it's kind of a strange choice to have so many responses switchable and not have a switchable reverb. So I'm glad they did this because it does make a sonic difference. I don't know how close these are to the Valve emulations, and I'm not sure we'll ever be able to know. But not being able to switch reverb, but being able to switch the responses of the Valve emulations, it's a strange choice, but I'm glad this is there. It gives you an instant tonal change. I think the 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗏s sound fantastic and are usable to great, again, for any front-of-the-house person. And the fact that you can turn it off is even better. So it would have lost a point in my mind had you not been able to turn off the 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗡 function. The fact that you can just do a clean DI out is absolutely wonderful. And maybe we see an updated version of the Amped One in years to come with more features. But as it stands, this is featureful enough. Right, that's it for now from me and the Amped One. You've reached the end of the video, which puts you firmly in the end of the video club. And to prove that you are a member of this prestigious elite, when you leave a comment telling me what you think about the Amped One and all the sounds and features, please also include the phrase, "That was funny when the fan kicked in. Ha ha ha!" And that'll make me giggle, so thank you for doing that. It'll also allow YouTube to see that people are engaging with the video and therefore show it to more people, and there will be more guitar geeks in the future, growing the world of guitar and guitar geekdom forever and ever. Thanks. There are links to everything you saw in this video in the video description. There are videos over there, and if this video helped you in any way, consider subscribing or giving it a thumbs up. I thank you. My name is Andy. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.